What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we'll get you caught up on all the latest news going on around the conference ahead of this week's games, and we'll give you our picks for SEC Week 7. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is helping you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We got plenty to jump into. Let's dive into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted.
Makes the handoff.
What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start over at Texas A&M as Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies head on the road for a big game against Tennessee. Joe Milton, Josh Heupel, and Joe Milton got a dangerous arm with some really good wide receivers. And Jimbo Fisher saying this week that they've been taking measures in practice to prepare for the talents of a Joe Milton. He said, look, there are very few guys who could throw the ball like Joe Milton can. It's very hard. He said, you got to get your scout team guys ready. And when you're doing good on good with your guys, trying to make sure you do it, build drills into where your defense can get after it. And he said, look, we got to bounce back after losing that game to Alabama. So Aggies need to find a way to slow down Joe Milton, slow down the momentum of those wide receivers. And it can be difficult for Jimbo Fisher because, look, they may not have a quarterback on the scout team who can replicate Joe Milton. But over at Tennessee, their pass rush, they've been getting after it this year. Much improved at Tennessee. The Vols had 31 sacks all of last season. They've already racked up 22 sacks through just 5 games this year. James Pierce leads the way for the Vols with 5 sacks. Tyler Barron right behind him with 4. Last year, only one Vol had more than 3 sacks on the year. So they're getting after it. And if you watched A&M's offensive line against Alabama last week, it was ugly. They struggled to protect. So if Tennessee can get some penetration, get after it with their front 4, man, Tennessee can have some success this week. Josh Heupel talking this week about the improvement on the pass rush. He said one thing that's making the difference is the recruitment of some of their D linemen. He said adding length, athleticism, development, those guys and the guys that have been here on this roster the entire time, improving. He said also guys that understand the defensive scheme more this year. He said understanding of the scheme that we're playing, doing the right things at the right time, that can that can twist games when you're trying to apply pressure with your front 4. You better get into the quarterback with a 4-man rush, and that changes the coverages that you're able to deploy on the back end. So Tennessee hoping their front 4 gets pressure on Max Johnson and Texas A&M. It is going to be the game of the week. We'll break it down for you in just a little bit. Meanwhile, over at Florida, they released their depth chart ahead of this week's big game against South Carolina. Florida going to be without a few key players again. Center Kingsley Aguakin will be out again with an ankle injury. He's only appeared in 2 games this season. The Gators will also be without a couple of receiving options. Jonathan Odom, the tight end, and receiver Andy Jean. Odom has recorded 75 receiving yards this season. Offensive tackle Austin Barber and running back Trevor Etienne are both expected to be back on the field this weekend. So that is big and kind of interesting. On 3, Zach Abolverdi over there put out a report that Florida ranks number 1 in the FBS in true freshman participation with 11 guys seeing action. The amount is 4 more than Clemson and LSU, who are both tied for second. So if you're a true freshman, you want to play early, sounds like Florida and LSU and Clemson would be 3 good options for you because now look, that might be out of necessity there that they're playing a lot of true freshmen. But if you're a recruit out there, you're going, I can go to those schools, play early. But Big task for Florida. This is a big game this week against South Carolina. They really need this one. Speaking of South Carolina, Shane Beamer says he sees a Florida defense that's going to present a lot of challenges. He talked about them this week, said all their units on defense are just really, really good. Florida's in the top half of the SEC in just about every major statistical category defensively, and number 41 nationally in FEI efficiency ratings. Shane Beamer said they're really big up front. They're hard to move on the interior of the D-line. On the edges, they have a combination of size and length. The two linebackers are really rangy and athletic. Defensively, they have elite players, elite recruits that everybody in the country wanted. It's just a really talented group. They present a lot of problems, a lot of volume in their defense, and they've been really good on third down defense as well. Gators have been getting better at getting off the field this season. Florida's allowed opponents to convert 26% of third downs. That ranks third best in the conference. Gators have had some road trouble, though. Utah, they connected with a big 70-yard passing touchdown their first play against Florida in week 1. And their other loss, Kentucky's Ray Davis, ran all over them. So Spencer Rattler have a field day on Florida this week. We will see. Over at Georgia, Kirby Smart and the Georgia offense currently have the best passing attack in the SEC, averaging 349 passing yards a game. And they've accumulated over 2,000 total receiving yards so far this season. Carson Beck been getting better and better each week at quarterback. And some big-time pass catchers, right? Brock Bowers, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Robert Thomas. And Robert Thomas really making his impact felt, transferring in from Mississippi State. And Kirby Smart was asked about him this week. He said, Robert's worked really hard, conditioning level, toughness level, learning the offense in terms of expanding his knowledge and information. He's picked things up really quickly. Robert Thomas coming off season Mississippi State where he had over 600 receiving yards, and it's coming along in the Georgia offense. We'll see what he does this weekend against Vanderbilt. Over to LSU, Brian Kelly meeting with the media this week, updating some of his injuries. He said the team will be without wide receiver Chris Hilton again this week. He injured his ankle in the Ole Miss game. Offensive lineman Charles Turner, linebacker Omar Spates, and wide receiver Aaron Anderson have been cleared for Saturday. So those are some good pieces that LSU will get back. Now, as for his quarterback, Jayden Daniels suffered a rib injury in LSU's win over Missouri last weekend. Brian Kelly saying it's one of those things where as a coach, you want to be aware of how a quarterback is feeling and how you move into the week. We had a captain's meeting on Monday. He told me that day he didn't want anything to be changed up. We didn't change anything up, and he took all the reps this week in practice. So it sounds like Jayden Daniels is 100%. Of course, Brian Kelly noted some bumps and bruises, but Jayden Daniels will be ready to go for Auburn this weekend. Speaking of Auburn, Hugh Freeze talking about his team, and coming off the bye week, they face a tough challenge going into Death Valley. He said, I think we've been pretty good at most things this season. I guess like all teams collectively as a whole, we struggled in some areas. Those margin of error for victory come down to a few plays, and defensively we've played extremely well, but still need to improve in a lot of levels. Hugh Freeze said that if his team could get healthy, that his defense can continue to improve. He said, now that we're not as healthy, I think we'd be really, really good if we had everybody with us. But we'll see what they do this weekend in Death Valley. Over at Kentucky, they're coming off that embarrassing loss to Georgia, but associate head coach Vince Marrow said the Wildcats are going to show up and play Mizzou strong this weekend. He said, when you get beat like that with the players we got in that locker room, the coaches we have in the staff, it doesn't take much for us to get us up and go get ready for another game. If you're not ready, you're going to get the same results you had last week, because I have a lot of respect for Mizzou. Our guys know what's going on. They know what's up. Missouri also coming off of their first loss of the season, losing to LSU. Now, Ray Davis looking to bounce back this weekend. To this point, Ray Davis carried the ball 91 times for 653 yards, 8 touchdowns. Drawing some eyes from the Senior Bowl and rising up some draft boards. So we'll see what Ray Davis, how he finishes the season and what kind of attention he gets. Meanwhile, over at Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz said that he doesn't believe Kentucky is 38 points worse than Georgia. He said, you can tell they have a lot of pride in their performance. They're going to be really fired up for this one and say last week was not who we are. So we're going to have our hands full with a really good Kentucky team this weekend. Just a few more quick notes over at Alabama. Nick Saban providing a couple injury updates for his team. He said that wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks has been practicing, while defensive back Malachi Moore and James Burnham, there will be game time decisions. He said, we were preparing as if neither guy would be able to play, but can't say that emphatically. Ja'Cory Brooks played briefly, returning kickoffs against A&M last week. Moore and Burns both exited the A&M game early last week. They will host Arkansas this week, where they are a heavy favorite. And speaking of Arkansas, Sam Pittman, it's getting tough over there. Multiple injuries there for Arkansas, and linebacker Chris Paul, the safety Walcott, defensive lineman Cameron Ball, and cornerback Jalen Braxton all remain in doubt. Sam Pittman saying it's still way too early to make a decision on some of those guys. I don't know where we'll be with them, so we'll see where we get closer to this weekend. But Dwight McGlothern, the cornerback, he is expected to return after a concussion in the loss to Texas A&M back on September 30th. And we'll see. Banged up defense there for Arkansas, and Alabama seems to be getting their feet under them offensively. So might be a tough go for Sam Pittman and the Hogs. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll start to preview some of the games happening this weekend, and we'll start to give you our picks. That is coming your way in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. They are going to help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job. LinkedIn, the LinkedIn profile will start to spread the word that you're hiring. And they got great tools on there, like screening questions. Going to make it easy for you to focus on the candidates with all the right skills that you're looking for, so you can interview them and hire them. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality candidates versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, helping you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers coming back and checking us out. And by the way, if you haven't checked out college football live preview show, they're doing it every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern on the Locked On College channel. So go check that out. They'll be previewing all the big games happening every weekend. All right, we're going to dive into it and start previewing some of the games happening this weekend, so let's do that.
Matchup breakdowns.
And we're going to start with #1 Georgia at Vanderbilt. Vandy is a 31.5-point underdog. This one will be at 12 noon Eastern on CBS. Georgia, they have won by a combined 117-0 score over the past two seasons against Vanderbilt. It is not pretty. Georgia is getting after it. The defense is starting to wake up. The offense is playing really well. Carson Beck, the quarterback, has completed, 73% of his passes so far, puts him on pace with Stetson Bennett's school record of 68% all last year. Beck ranks 6th nationally in passing. Ken Seals on the other side for Vandy, he appears set for his 3rd straight start, with A.J. Swan continue to recover from that bruised elbow. Weapons all over for Georgia. Brock Bowers making a strong case for his 2nd straight Mackey Award. He had 7 catches for 132 yards last week. He's the first Georgia player to post 3 straight games with at least 100 yards receiving since Terrence Edwards back in 2002. This will be the 10th time Vanderbilt has played the top-ranked team in the country. Commodores were shut out the last time they played them, 59-0. To then #1 ranked Alabama in 2017. The easy pick here is to take Georgia minus the 31.5, because obviously it's a lot of points, but they just beat the hell out of Kentucky, and so it's easy to think they're going to do the same thing with Vandy. But something just gives me a vibe that Vandy will score a touchdown or two and keep this one close. I'm thinking something like, I don't know, Georgia 41, Vandy 13. I know some Georgia fans out there may be going, we're not going to 13 to Vandy. Look, Ken Seals has moved the ball a little bit. He's been doing okay. He's not, doesn't exude the confidence that they had in A.J. Swan, but Ken Seals can move the ball a little bit. They got some good wide receiver weapons, Will Shepard, London Humphreys. So, I don't know. I think something just gives me a vibe. Vandy's going to hang around, but we'll see. This might end up being Georgia 55-0, and I'll eat my words on it. But that's the pick. We'll go Vandy plus 31.5 against Georgia. The next game, it is going to be Arkansas at Alabama. And, man, if you've been watching Alabama lately, they are getting better and better week in and week out. Jayden Milrow really starting to improve offensively. The 11th-ranked Crimson Tide, they've worked their way into the top of the division and kept the team's national championship hopes alive with a 3-game win streak. 3 of the Razorbacks' losses this season have come by a touchdown or less. The Hogs are the league's most penalized team and ranked 12th in the SEC in sacks allowed. And Nick Saban, of course, talking about Malachi Moore and their punter James Burnip, game-time decisions. Arkansas, they had 4 defensive starters leave the Mississippi game last week with injuries. Jayden Milrow having quite a memorable game a year ago against Arkansas. Remember that? He replaced the injured Bryce Young, came in, executed the offense, led Alabama to a win on the road against Arkansas. He had a 77-yard run in that one. That was really like his first big-time game experience. He went, whoa, Jayden Milrow can do some things. Arkansas, they have never beaten Alabama since Nick Saban arrived in Tuscaloosa in 2007. That streak is up to 16 games. The Razorbacks' last win against Alabama came in 2006, a 24-23 double overtime victory. The Tide have also won 19 consecutive homecoming games. Look, it is a 19.5-point spread. Alabama favored. I think Alabama covers the 19.5. I'd like to think that Arkansas is going to get something going on offense and be able to score some points. Like we talked about, 3 of their losses have come by a touchdown or less. It's not going to happen this week in Alabama. A lot of bad things are going to happen for KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders and company, and Alabama's going to win big. They will cover that 19.5. Give me Alabama minus the 19.5. Next up, we got Florida at South Carolina, the Gators. They will be taking on the Gamecocks, 3:30 Eastern on the SEC Network. South Carolina, a 2-point home favorite. Florida, they were ranked earlier in the season after defeating Tennessee, but they're looking to win consecutive SEC games for the first time since last season. The Gamecocks need a win if they want to become bowl eligible, build on their 8-win season from a year ago. Spencer Rattler, the quarterback, he's completed 67% of his throws. He has 12 touchdowns, despite getting sacked 22 times. Gators lead the SEC in fewest yards given up through the air at 144 a game, and they're tied for fewest passing touchdowns allowed at 4. So a good Gator passing defense and a good Spencer Rattler throwing the ball all over. So something's got to give there. Florida, they've lost 4 of their past 6 games at South Carolina, including a 40-17 loss 2 years ago in Billy Napier's first year and Shane Beamer's first year, for what it's worth. Florida quarterback Graham Mertz, he has completed 70% or more of his passes in each of his first 6 starts with the Gators. He is the only Florida passer to accomplish that over the past 20 seasons. As much as I want to take Florida on the road, and keep in mind, they have struggled on the road, all those losses they've had on the road, something just telling me this is such a big game for South Carolina. I think they're going to pull it out at home. Give me South Carolina minus the 2. Don't feel good about it. Don't feel good about it at all, but just feels like this is one Shane Beamer company have got to win. One of those 50-50 toss-up games, because there's not a whole lot of easily winnable games still in South Carolina's schedule to come. So Shane Beamer, if you're the real deal and you're building something there in Columbia, you got to win this one this week. All right, we'll get to more games going on in the conference this week and continue to give you our picks for this weekend in just a second right here on Locked On SEC. First, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, all the NFL action happening this weekend and college action as well. They got it all up there for you at FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. Wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much, much more. They got tons of games from the college slate up there this weekend, tons of SEC games as well. So if you want to get in on the action or some of the NFL games all on Sunday night, Monday night, whatever, go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, kick off your NFL weekend right with FanDuel.com/lockedon. They are FanDuel, and they are the official partner of the NFL. Go check them out today, FanDuel. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC. Again, thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. We've got a couple more big games to dive into this weekend, so let's go ahead and do that as we open it back up, getting into our matchup breakdowns. And we start with the next one. It is Auburn at number 22, LSU. You know how good Jayden Daniels has been this year. Auburn, they are chasing their first conference victory and first win over a ranked team this season. Auburn, they have struggled to pass the ball. LSU, they've been good, they've been bad defending the pass, put it bluntly. So something's got to give here. Auburn can't throw the ball. LSU can't defend the pass. Auburn is 119th of 130 FBS games in passing offense, averaging just 156 passing yards a game with 5 touchdowns. LSU, they're 119th in defending the pass, giving up 282 on average through the air, along with 15 scoring passes. Quarterback Peyton Thorne appears to still be the starter, but I think we may see some Robbie Ashford in here, mixing some runs to keep LSU off balance. Now, Jayden Daniels, he is a monster for LSU. He leads the SEC and ranks number 2 in the nation in total offense at 398 per game. That's 328 passing, 70 yards rushing a game. He has accounted for 4 or more touchdowns in 5 straight games, the longest such streak in school history. The home team has won 18 of the last 23 meetings in this series. LSU leads 19-6-1 at Tiger Stadium. I was at that game a couple years ago in Death Valley when Bo Nix did some Bo Nix things. But again, Auburn at number 22, LSU. LSU is an 11-point home favorite. This is 6 p.m. Central on ESPN Saturday night. These teams are not scheduled to play one another next season, and that will end a 32-year streak of annual matchups between LSU and Auburn. Auburn, they have scored 17 touchdowns, 12 of them on the ground. And for LSU, their run game's gotten going. Logan Diggs, he had his second straight 100-yard game last week, having a career-high 134 rushing yards against Missouri. Look, as much as I'd like to go off history and go, a lot of these games have been close. It's been a tough rivalry game. I think LSU covers the 11. I look at it this way. As good as Auburn's defense is, I like their secondary. I like Jalen Simpson. I like those guys. They're going to need some turnovers. And Jayden Daniels is very good at protecting the football. I look at this. This is simple. LSU's going to score at least 30. Can Auburn score 30? Offensively, no. They're going to need some help. They're going to need a block punt, a punt return for a touchdown, a pick six. They're going to need something to spark them to let them know they could stay in this. At the end of the day, I think LSU's offense is too much, and I think LSU wins and covers that 11. I'm thinking LSU something like, 34-21, something like that. So give me LSU minus the 11, but I do think Auburn hangs around for a little while. Look, they gave Georgia all they can handle. See what they do this weekend in Death Valley. Our next matchup is going to be Mizzou at number 24, Kentucky. Now, Mizzou's defense, they struggled last week. Kentucky's defense struggled last week. So there's a whole lot of bad. But Kentucky does have Ray Davis, who has been very good. We'll get to him in a second. But this will be a homecoming game for Kentucky. They are 2.5-point favorites, 7:30 Eastern on the SEC network. And this will put Mark Stoops back in front of Wildcats fans for the first time since he said earlier this week on his radio show that angry Kentucky fans in the Georgia loss need to pony up more donations if they want to go get some of those big 4 and 5-star recruits that Georgia has. Missouri, they got big time recruit. That's a 5-star, Luther Burden. He comes into this game leading the nation with 793 yards and averaging 132 receiving per game. That's great. Missouri and Kentucky, they rank in the bottom half of the SEC in penalties. Mizzou was flagged 11 times last week against LSU. Missouri quarterback Brady Cook, he had a career day passing against LSU, 411 yards to 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 313 per game. That is 3rd best in the SEC, 9th best in FBS. Well, Kentucky's got Ray Davis. Fell back down to earth last week after his 280-yard performance against Florida, just 59 yards on 15 carries, but that was Georgia. Did catch a couple of passes for 36 yards. Leads the SEC with 653 yards. That's 10th in FBS. And he's responsible for 8 rushing touchdowns this year. I think Ray Davis gets going back again this week. I think maybe we have a little bit of shootout. I think Kentucky scores some points. I think Mizzou scores some points. I'm going with the home team in this one. I'm just playing it safe. Give me Kentucky minus the 2.5. If this game was in Como, I'd probably lean Mizzou. But Kentucky, look, you got to bounce back this week and show that last week that was just Georgia being Georgia. But you're a much better team than that. And let's see if Kentucky can cover the 2.5. The loser of this game will be a team that was previously undefeated a week ago, but will suddenly find themselves on a 2-game losing streak. And lastly, we've got Texas A&M at number 19, Tennessee. The Vols are a 3-point home favorite. This one will be at 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Texas A&M Aggies bring in the nation's 10th ranked defense, yielding just 268 yards a game, while also leading the country in tackles for loss. They have not allowed an opponent to run for more than 100 yards and passing in a game this season. Tennessee ranks 7th nationally, averaging 231 rushing yards a game. Jalen Wright, he ran for 123 in their win over South Carolina before their bye week. Tennessee did lose Brew McCoy to a season-ending ankle injury, and they spent the bye week looking at some other folks. Who's going to step up? Ramel Keaton, Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, all possibilities for some more work this week. And the Aggies, they got to prove that they could shake off that loss to Alabama where they held a lead. Both teams coming in with stingy defenses on 3rd down. The Aggies pile up a bunch of tackles for a loss. They rank 6th in the country, allowing 17 of 79. It's 25% conversions on 3rd down, but Tennessee not far behind them. They give up third downs 32%, or first downs on 3rd down 32% of the time. Again, much like the Kentucky game, I'm going Tennessee minus the 3. I think Joe Milton is good enough. I think Josh Heupel will get the most out of him. And I think that ground game is going to run on Texas A&M. But Max Johnson, don't trust him after that second half last week in the loss to Alabama. So here's our picks for the week. We're taking Vandy plus the 31.5 against Georgia. Just a lot of points. We're taking Alabama minus the 19.5 at home against Arkansas. We're taking South Carolina minus the 2 at home versus Florida. We're taking a lot of the home favorites here. LSU minus 11 against Auburn, Kentucky minus 2.5 against Mizzou, and Tennessee minus 3 against A&M. Now, we had a really good week 2 weeks ago making our picks. I think we were something like 7-1 or something. And then last week, you should have faded us. We were bad with our picks. I think we went like 1-5. Again, we're betting the spread here, not just straight up winners. We could do that. That would be a lot easier. But nonetheless, we'll see if we can bounce back with some better game performances and predictions for this week. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. And come on back on Monday. We'll give you our winners and losers of the weekend. Got plenty more to discuss. Shout out to our everydayers coming back and checking us out every day. And plenty more to discuss. You guys have a safe weekend. Enjoy all the college football, including all those games from the SEC. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday right here on Locked On SEC.